Hello there, this is Kush Sharma from Creative Pad Media. In this tutorial, we're going to be learning how we can use a combination of different AI tools to go from this image to this. So we're going to be basically changing the background in a realistic manner and just turning it into something totally different with the help of some AI tools. These tools, first of all, are going to be some of the tools inside Photoshop, the AI tools. Then we are also going to be using these two tools. So we will be using ChatGPT to create the prompts, and we will also be using Adobe Firefly to execute those prompts. And you might be thinking, but Kush, Adobe Firefly is already inside Photoshop in the form of Generative Fill. Well, you're going to see why even using the website separately sometimes can be important. So let's get started with this process. First of all, to use the AI tools within Photoshop that I'm going to be showing here, you will need to have the access to the Creative Cloud version of Photoshop, the real Photoshop. You can get a 7-day free trial using the link that I've given in the description in case you don't have this particular version of Photoshop. Having said that, let's get started. This image has also been given to you and you'll find the link to download that in the description. So in an ideal AI world, this should be a pretty easy process, because if you're changing the background to something different, all we should be doing here is simply to use Generative Fill to select the background and change it. But I'm going to show you why that doesn't always work in such a good way, especially when you're trying to create some really realistic backgrounds. So let's see that process. So suppose I go and I say select subject. In fact, what I'm going to show you might actually be okay for a lot of people, because I have shown this process in some of my other videos. So let's say, like right now, let's not care about the selection being too perfect, but we are basically going to inverse the background. And now we can just give it a prompt, let's say in this case of a colorful background. And that's where ChatGPT comes into play. So let's say I can type in Generative Fill prompt for a colorful background. You can type in anything that you want, any type of background that you want to create. But I just feel that ChatGPT just creates these really detailed prompts which work well with with Generative Fill. So it's like one AI tool helping another. So we have our contextual taskbar open up here. We're going to go here and type, basically paste this, and let's just see what this generates. All right, let's wait for the results. And you can see, right, this tries to do a job which is okay, but the background doesn't look too great. Like, don't worry about these things. Right now, I'm not talking about whether this is looking real or not, because we can always add shadows within just a few clicks and make it look real. But the point right now is I'm just talking about the background itself. This kind of looks more like an artish background, something which is kind of a graphic, but this doesn't look real, right? Even if you see the other variations here, you can see, right? I mean, that all is editable. That's not a problem. And probably this one is slightly okay. It's even added a school bag. But the point is, these backgrounds don't look good. So in these cases where you kind of require something more realistic, I've just found that when you actually go over to Adobe Firefly, the same model on which this Generative Fill works, but when you use this and their latest models, it just works better. So let me just show you. If I go here, so if you go to firefly.adobe.com, and with your Adobe account that you basically use to access Photoshop, you can use the same account. You actually get certain amount of credits, so you can actually use this for free to till the time you exhaust your credit. So just use your same Adobe account after going here, sign up, sign in, and then you'll be able to see this and do what I'm just doing. So go down here, you'll find text to image, basically similar to what Generative Fill does. Now, just these are some of the images that the different users are generating, which have been voted high. So you can see some amazing images it is capable of generating. Let's just click on any one of them. Doesn't matter, because we mainly want to get to the tool. Okay, so this is the interface where we can generate our photos in a much better way than what we can do inside Photoshop with Generative Fill. So here, there are certain settings which can help us. First is we can choose the model. By default, this is the latest model. So you can see Firefly Image 3. So my best guess is probably this model has still not been incorporated into Photoshop. I haven't been able to verify that information, but my guess is that the model on which the Firefly model on which Generative Fill works probably isn't the same as this one. This one is definitely more advanced, as you're going to see, because we're going to be using the same prompt, but it's going to produce much better results. But there's certain things you have to do before we can get a good result here. So one is, yes, we let this be by default, the latest model, which is 3. Then the aspect ratio. So here we get certain options, and I would have loved to have exactly the ability to put the exact dimensions here. We don't have that, but at least we can go for a portrait look because we know that our original image is also portrait, so it's going to be slightly longish in nature. Okay, so we can choose this orientation. Content type, again, remember we're trying to move away from that art looking background, so we're going to select photo. So don't let this be on auto, because this would mean that after we type in the prompt, we're giving the liberty to AI to determine whether it's going to be art or photo. We want a photorealistic background, so we're going to select photo here. Now the next part is the most important part, which is right now possible in Firefly. That is to give a reference photo. It is actually also possible inside Photoshop, in Generative Fill, in the contextual taskbar that we've just seen, but not in the main Photoshop. This feature is available in Photoshop Beta. So right on the top of the screen, if you're interested how the reference photo works here, okay, you can just watch this video, which is just coming on top later on. But the point is, in this Photoshop, we can't give a reference photo, but here we can. And the reference photo makes a big difference because then it tries to keep the perspective and the structure of the image the same when you generate something from the prompt. So you're going to see what I mean by this. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit this upload image button, and then we basically will be uploading this original image that we had here. Okay, so let's do that. So let's go back here. Let's hit upload image. And I have this image here. So I'm just going to select this. And it's just going to give you this message. You can just hit continue, doesn't matter. So now we've given a reference to Firefly when it comes to the composition. So when it ultimately generates it, you're going to find that it's going to have a similar look to this shot. That means there's going to be a woman, and she'll be standing in the same pose. The lighting will kind of be similar. It's just that it'll change the background according to the prompt that we are giving. Okay, and then we'll be able to use this image in a much better way because the background is going to look much nicer. But this is important, and even this part. So this next part where you see this option which says strength, what this means is Firefly is asking us right now, okay, we've got your reference image, but when you ultimately write in the prompt and hit generate, how close should the structure and perspective be to this image? By default, it's kind of half-half. So we're saying we're giving you a certain amount of liberty, but that's not what we want to do. Okay, perspective and angles and lighting and everything should be as close as possible to the original image, because we are going to be taking this back inside Photoshop and manipulating it a bit. And it'll be easier to manipulate it and kind of fake that whole scenario and put that woman back into the background if everything else was similar. So we're basically going to bump up this strength slide. We're going to say, no, we're not giving you too much liberty. This has to be as close to the reference image as possible. Okay. Now, the next option, I have played around a lot with this. This is also very similar. So the last was composition. Here also we can put a reference image under the style option. Style is more about the colors and all these things in the shot. Do you also want to give a reference image to that? Now here I've experimented a lot. I would suggest do not give a reference image for style, because what happens is if I was to upload this image again under style also, no matter how detailed a prompt we give to create a colorful background, it still won't create. I tried this a lot of times. Even I tried to reduce the slider here, telling it, okay, I'm giving you certain liberty to still get the colors in the photo, but no, it was still producing black backgrounds. That means it takes this very seriously, okay? So don't upload anything here because we're going for a completely different looking background, okay? So we're not going to upload any reference image here. And there's some other options that you get, like you can choose what kind of effects you want in the generation. Do you want certain type of colors and tones, some certain type of lighting, certain type of camera angle? We don't really need to play around with any of these options now. Why? Because we've simply bypassed it all by giving a reference image. So we don't really need to now do play around with any of these things. So basically we've given a reference for composition. Secondly, we've just told that, yeah, make sure it's a photorealistic image. These are the only two things that we've done. Now we're going to copy the same prompt that we took from ChatGPT, okay, this one. And you're going to see these results totally are way superior than what we get with the generative fill in Photoshop. So let's just do this and let's wait for this. All right, so here you're starting to get our results, and you can see, right, if you look at these backgrounds, just compare something like this, okay, with, we go back here with this. This looks like child's play, right, in front of such a detailed background. kind of ones that we're getting here, right? So if we want at this stage, if we don't like any one of them, you can hit generate again. But remember, if you're on a free account, you have to watch your credits because they are going to expire pretty soon, and it only reloads after a month. So let's say we just want to be right now slightly quick about it. So what we do is we just select one of these, okay? But trust me, if you just play around with it a bit more, change the prompt slightly, again, by using ChatGPT's help, you get even better looking backgrounds than what you're getting here. But let's say out of these ones, I do like the second one a lot, okay? So we're just going to now download this image. And what we then going to do is we're basically going to, we're going to go back to Photoshop and we are going to open up this image. So let's do that. All right, so this is going to be our base image. Of course, we're going to change the person here. We're going to remove her and then only keep the background and try to create a composite, okay? So first of all, let's just go back to our original image. Let's just delete this because I just wanted to show you that Generative Fill right now is not as good as Firefly on the website. And I'm just going to basically put this on top. And right now, even though it's not too important, let's just transform this. So I'm going to hit Control Command T. We'll just make this slightly bigger. And I can hold down Alt or Option while doing this so that it, does it like this. I think this is fine, slightly smaller. It keeps it in the center while scaling if you hit Alt or Option while moving this. I think that looks fine. We can always move this around later, but basically this is somewhere that she's going to be, right? So let's just hit Enter. So we've got this part done. Let's hide this because what we have to first of all do is we have to get rid of this AI generated person here so that we only have the background. And this is where what we can do is we can just take a rough selection, just use the lasso tool, and we're basically going to be using Generative Fill for this. If we just outline, give it an outline, like a rough selection like this, usually it can do the job. So don't give any prompt here because when you're trying to remove something, it's just best to leave this empty, even according to Photoshop. But sometimes it doesn't work. Let's just wait for the results. All right, so you can see that pretty much did a perfect job. Sometimes you can, first of all, see the different variations, but we don't really need to see because we can see the objects are in these two variations also. But since this is much smaller, we can just do this process again, or you can also use the remove tool, but let me just try this once more. All right, so this time that has pretty much gone. And we have a bit of this issue here. That's not a problem. We'll anyway be creating some shadows and also it's not going to be a problem. But at least now we have this empty background. Now we can open up this layer again. Now all we have to basically do is just a few things are left. We just need to make a selection so that we can remove the background. She comes against the new background. And of course, there are not going to be any shadows. So we'll just quickly create with a few clicks a fake shadow. And we just need to match the color. That's all. So I'm pretty much going to be showing you all these things in a very automated way. I don't want to show you anything which requires too much effort here. So first of all, let's try to get rid of the background. And if you watched one of my videos before, I recently compared some different AI tools when it comes to selection and which one is the best. So if you haven't seen this video, it's on top right now. You can click on the link there. But basically, I found the object selection AI tool to do the best job and not select subject when it comes to making a selection. So what we do with this tool is you can change the mode either to rectangle or lasso, but I'm going to select lasso so that I can just draw around her and then let Photoshop figure out what the subject is. But this, according to me, works much more precisely than what we get with select and subject, okay? So you're going to see it here also. So can you see? It's just gets even near these parts, right? These parts would have been really tough with the other tools, but it even gets this almost perfectly, okay? If it's not too perfect, we can also use the select and mask later on, but let's first of all open up a layer mask. So you can see, right, the moment we open up the layer mask, the background disappears. This already looks pretty good, but if we just zoom in a bit, now this is not a selections tutorial. I have a select and mask tutorial that you can always access. The link is hovering in front of you, where I show you how to refine selections, because right now my idea is more on the AI part, okay? But let's just quickly, with the layer mask selected, let's head into select and mask, just to refine this at least for a few seconds in a easy way. So here what we can do is, since we already have the layer that we want underneath, the colorful layer, we can select this option for previewing. That means on layers. So it's going to show us the layer which is below, okay? And you can see here. So this looks okay. Maybe it has missed some part of the head here. So we can take our refine edge brush tool, just paint this back wherever we feel things just need to be added a bit. Like I said, select and mask is a slightly complex tool. If you're seeing it for the first time, check out the video that just came before and that should help you out. So you can see, right, like there's a bit of jaggedness here. Usually I would use the smooth slider slightly for this. You can see it has corrected that. But to be very honest, we don't really do things this way because when we use the smooth slider, it even made these parts smooth. So we actually take the head separately and the body separately. Like I said, this is not a selections tutorial, so I'm just being slightly rough about it. Also, we can just notice a bit of that black edge here. Sometimes that remains, and for that you can just shift the edge inward. So I've just taken this towards the minus side, just shifted the edge inward. And I don't think we need to do anything. This looks pretty decent, okay? Maybe just take the refine edge slightly on this part. No, actually it was fine. So, okay, that is fine. And in case you'd ever want to add something manually, you can use the manual brush and add stuff like this, okay? So I'm going to now hit OK since our mask is slightly better, okay? And let's just zoom out. Now we're just left with two things. One is we just have to create the shadows, okay? And the second thing is that we just need to match the color that is falling on her body and her clothes and her legs with this slightly colorful looking background. So this can be done very easily. First of all, let's take care of the color part, okay? So because I'm just going to be using an automated tool for that, which is called match color. And how that works is we basically have to tell Photoshop or give Photoshop a reference about the image from which we want to extract the colors from, which is that image, the color background one, right? So let me show you how this works. We need to go to Image, Adjustments, and we'll be going on to Match Color. So make sure your image is selected, not the mask, otherwise it will be hidden. So we can go to Adjustments, we can go to Match Color. So this dialog box is going to open up, and its main thing here is asking us for a source, okay? So you can see here that right now, we just have one source, which is this very image. That's because for this to recognize a source, it needs to be opened up in another tab. So basically, this particular image of that empty background that we had, we need to open it up in a separate tab. If it's sounding confusing, don't worry, you'll soon understand what I mean. So which is that part? It's here, right? If I hide everything, I mean, you can see, right? Even if you just take this image, it's okay because even basically she had the colors from which we're trying to extract the colors, right? So it's okay even if we take this image as the reference image, the original that we got from Firefly. But we need to open it in a separate tab so that it can come under that source drop down menu, okay? So what we can do here is we just right click on this, hit duplicate layer, and then under destination, select new, okay? So this, if I open it now, it just comes on its own tab. You could, of course, open it up like the normal way also. I just feel this is faster. But now we will be able to use match color. So we can go back to our image. Make sure you hit the image thumbnail. Go to Image, Adjustments, Match Color. Now I have a separate tutorial on match color where I explain all the sliders. I'm not going to do it here, but if you're interested, the link to that video is in front of you. But basically what this does is once we start to select the source, which is going to be this untitled new document or that image that we've chosen, the moment you do that, it's going to put those colors on our subject. Now, of course, this looks ridiculous, but what we can do is we can just use this fade slider to fade this effect all the way. So right now it has no effect, and then start to move this and reduce that fade. So you can see that now that effect is coming. Of course, at this much, it's so bad that it kind of looks like a graphic. So much color has been added. But if you go somewhere here, you can see, right, starts to match that particular thing. And for me, this is one of the fastest ways to do this in Photoshop. Now, if you're noticing that the color cast is too much, what you can do is you can hit the neutralize button. This just removes, it keeps the colors, but this strong cast that you're seeing, it will remove that. So just see. So the colors are still there, but now, because the color cast has been removed, you just might have to be slightly more aggressive with this. So maybe just take the slider more. So you can see. I find this best, that select neutralize to remove the cast and then be aggressive here. This just looks more realistic. And you can see, right, this now starts to match the background. So, because in real life, if you were shooting this and you have a background like this, light is going to reflect from all these colors and it's going to give you a look like this. You can't have a person on which so close to the background on which the light is not reflecting. So it just makes it look more realistic, and we're going to hit OK. And if I just undo this, you're going to actually see the difference. So if I hit Control Command Z, just see. This was without match color and this is with match color. Makes a huge amount of difference. It's automated. Few clicks, you can get the job done. That's why I like this tool. We just left with one task, which is to create a shadow, which is also something that we're going to do in an automated way. So this is the layer on which your body is there, right? So we can just use this layer. We can right click on this because we don't want to do anything manually. We're simply going to use the drop shadow function for this. So we can hit blending options because that's where the drop shadow comes in. We can hit drop shadow. So just select this and you're going to get certain options to create the shadows. Now, in the original image, the shadow was like this from this angle. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So you can just move this angle right here. And the reason why I'm sticking to the original composition is because remember, we had feeded in this image inside Firefly and increased that slider. Remember, we were telling that keep everything the same. So there's a good chance that if we choose the original lighting, it's actually going to look real here also. That's the advantage of using a reference image in Firefly. Really waiting for this feature to come inside the main Photoshop. Like I said, it's already there in beta, the reference image option. So we've chosen the angle. The shadow is going to go like this. Now, first shadow that we're going to create will be for the body. So that's what we are doing right now. So you have three options here after you've chosen the angle to basically, work with the shadows. You can see first is I can select the distance option, just like this, and control how far the shadow is. Okay. This is basically you're talking about the angle of the lighting. So I think this much should be fine, but this is too harsh right now. Like you can notice the edges. That would probably mean that you were using a harsh source of light. Photographers usually don't do that because we don't see any shadows on her face. That means this will look unnatural. That means this has to be, this was shot using a softbox, right? That means the shadow cannot be this harsh. So we can just use the size slider just to diffuse this, the third slider, okay? Like this. If you really want to make it subtle, you can do it. You can even spread it, like make it slightly bigger, like this. I think, yeah, something like this is fine. Maybe we can just increase the distance a bit, and that just gives it a slightly more realistic look, okay? I'm just going to decrease the spread a bit. Yeah. All right, so this is done. If you want, you can play around with this more. Ultimately, you can also control things by opacity if you want to make things more subtle. And we can hit OK. So that's our first shadow done. And another shadow, so that she doesn't look like she's floating, will be for the heels. Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is we'll need a much more defined shadow. So let's just zoom in. And again, this is the layer on which the heels are. So we'll just highlight this layer. And again, the object selection tool here can help us. So if you go to object selection tool, let it be on lasso mode, just surround the area where you see the heels. Okay. And we're going to give the task to this tool to figure out and give us a precise selection of the heels. Because again, using the quick selection tool would have been like too tough. You can see, right? We pretty much got a decent selection. We can, it's slightly missed the heel, but that's completely fine because ultimately we are doing this to create a shadow. So it doesn't have to be a precise selection. We're going to be distorting the shadow anyway. So what we can do now is we want this on a separate layer so things remain non-destructive, and we'll be creating a shadow after that. So what we can do is we can hit Control Command C, that is copy this, whatever is being selected, and Control Command V, paste it. And it's just going to come on its new layer, which is just has these heels. So if we go this, you can see we've got this. And then we're going to do the same thing, what we just did with the body. Right click, blending options, this time create a drop shadow, but this time we want a much more defined shadow because this is closer to the ground, right? So that's how it works. So we're going to go to drop shadow and just play around with these. First of all, the distance. First of all, let's just change the size because this is what will make it more defined. So something like this. We want something like this. And don't worry too much right now about the distance in the other things because we're going to be distorting this anyway. But basically, we just wanted a shadow of those heels, okay? And now what we can do is just hit OK. Now what we need to do is we just need to place this shadow on a separate layer so that we can distort it. Because right now it's on this layer. If I distort it, even the heels will get distorted. So what you can do is we have created a drop shadow. This is called as a style. It's a layer style that has been applied to the layer itself. But in Photoshop, you can actually turn the style into its own layer also. And how that works is, with this layer selected where you had put this style of the drop shadow, if you go to layer, this menu here, you go to layer style and you say create layer. Just see what happens here. So just click on OK. And can you see now the drop shadow is a separate layer. So if I go here, I take my move tool, I can actually move the shadow anywhere that I want. So it's a separate thing now. And now what we can do is hit Control Command T for this. Hold down, after you've done it, you've got these handles, the transform handles. Hold down Control Command. That'll help you just distort it. So we want to just spread it like this in this angle. Okay. Like this. To just match it right here. Of course, I'm right now not being like 100% realistic about it. Just trying to get the job done. We're anyway going to be reducing the opacity, but something like this. Okay. So I hit enter, go back here. You see, right? This doesn't look bad, especially if I just turn down the opacity a bit. Something like this is fine. And if I wanted to further kind of just make it look more realistic, because the farther the shadow moves away, it's going to be slightly lighter. And also, like I mentioned, this is a soft light shot. So we can just, really slightly decrease the opacity more. And finally, just apply a layer mask here. Take a soft brush, okay, with, you can see the hardness of the edge is less. And just start to paint black, okay? So your foreground color should be black on the layer mask, just to, let's just reduce the opacity of the brush, just to take a bit away from it, that's all. Something like this. And you can see now that starts to look pretty good. So that's about it. Like I said, not the ideal scenario when it comes to using AI tools, because we still had to do a lot. I'm still researching on how this can be done in even a faster way. But for me, till now, whatever I've done, this appears to be the fastest and the most automated method till the time AI reaches such a level where what I showed in the first step, where you select the background, the generative fill does the job for you without distorting the subject, giving us a realistic background. Till the time it reaches that capability, I think this is the method that we are going to be following. I've got 2 resources for you before I end this video. If you get confused by things like layer mask, selections, and the other functions that I showed you, I have a free Photoshop course which has 20 videos, which is perfect for beginners because it teaches you all the fundamentals. It's completely free. The link will be given in the description. If you're already at the level and you're fascinated by the AI tools in Photoshop, you want to learn more about them, all the generative AI tools in Photoshop. I've got a very deep, detailed, and a long course called Photoshop Generative AI Editing Masterclass. The link will be given in the description. It's available by Udemy, and I hope to see you inside that course in case you want to join. But that's it for this video. I hope to see you in more videos where I'm going to be showing you what are my different experiments with the different AI tools. See you in those. Bye for now. And if you like this, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. See you later.